It's the last day of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress in Nasrec. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver the closing address at the ANC National Executive Committee meeting at Nasrec, Johannesburg this afternoon. In his political report, which he presented to the meeting, Ramaphosa, for the first time, volunteered to speak about the alleged theft of millions of US dollars from his Phala Phala farm in Limpopo almost 3 years ago. Amongst other issues, the ANC NEC deliberated on the Phala Phala matter in its three-day meeting this weekend. Today also marks a week since Ramaphosa submitted his response to the Section 89 independent panel of experts, which is assessing whether or not he has a case to answer on constitutional grounds over the saga. It's not clear whether this will end calls from NEC members such as Lindiwe Sisulu and Tony Yengeni for him to step down. The former party president Thabo Mbeki joined the meeting on his return from the Middle East. All right, let's now get the latest then on what's happening this afternoon then in Nasrec. A very good afternoon to you. Samkele Maseko, our senior politics reporter, joining us there from Nasrec. Sammy, talk to us about the latest. We understand, of course, that President Cyril Ramaphosa will indeed be closing the conference then. But what can you tell us about what's been happening thus far?
At this moment, they are still deliberating on the financial report and also receiving reports from the ANC's Electoral Committee on the various nominations that have taken place within the provinces and the regions and the branches, on how they will now move forward to collate all of that data and compound it and put it together to make sure that they announce on time who is nominated where, who are the contenders for the top 6 positions within the party, and who are the top 200 individuals or leaders in the ANC who will compete for to be members of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. During the next 2-3 weeks, they will be deliberating and consolidating those numbers. It's only KwaZulu-Natal thus far that has finished collating those numbers. The Northwest Province as well had started to collate their numbers on Monday. It is Gauteng and it is also Limpopo collating those numbers, which will ultimately culminate into provincial general councils to be held by the provinces, and the ANC's elections agency, which has been appointed to run these elections alongside the Electoral Committee, will then preside over announcing the official nominations to the provincial general councils. But also President Cyril Ramaphosa is still on the back foot pertaining to Phala Phala and the theft of about 580,000 rands in his about 580,000 US dollars, which amounts to about 10 million rands that are stolen at his farm, in his own words, saying that it is not 4 million US dollars as said by Arthur Fraser. Many NEC members saying that they were totally dumbstruck by the explanations that the ANC president provided to the National Executive Committee. Some of them were pleased with the explanation. Some of them are not pleased with the explanation. Individuals and leaders such as Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma also questioning why was these dollars stored at the couches or in his mattress, and questioning why was it not banked at a proper bank, and what is the time frame that this money has been at his farm.
Yeah. And I mean, are people sort of within the party? I mean, we know that there are people like Tony Yengeni and Lindiwe Sisulu who really want the president to step aside. Those who would be siding with your Lindiwe Sisulus and siding with your Tony Yengenis, are they buying any of it? Are they buying anything that the president is saying? Of course, there are those who would be siding with the president and certainly do support the president. But has anyone's opinion been swayed by any of the deliberations that have been taking place this weekend?
Once we know ANC, we've always known that ANC leaders, once they've taken a political stance that they are with or against a particular leader, they rarely ever move from that particular stance, particularly when it's conference fever. For instance, you take Fikile Mbalula. Fikile Mbalula in 2017 was a staunch Jacob Zuma fan, an advent supporter of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Just a mere month after that conference of the ANC in Nasrec, he then switched sides and supported the ANC president. So ANC leaders only choose and deflect from a particular position after a regional, a branch, a provincial or national conference. But as they build up to a conference, once they've decided they support Cyril Ramaphosa, they support Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, they support Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma or Mdumiseni Ntuli or Fikile Mbalula or even Phala Phala and any other leader, they don't move from the factional stance that they've taken until the end of that conference when their person has emerged or has been defeated. But in this NEC meeting, there are some whom are known to be core ANC leaders whom do not take any factional brief. One who comes to mind that all ANC leaders who always rave about is Dr. Naledi Pandor, saying with Dr. Naledi Pandor, right is right and wrong is wrong. There is no grey in between. It's either white or it's black. And she doesn't mince her words. So there are few ANC leaders within the National Executive Committee of the ANC who don't take factional lines. But many, once they've taken a factional stance, they go with that factional stance or that perspective that they believe in. For instance, Tony Yengeni has been very clear that he does not recognize that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is not fit to be an ANC leader and should be voted out, and that the new ANC must emerge once again come the 55th National Conference. He's been an advent supporter of former President Jacob Zuma. You go to Lindiwe Sisulu. Lindiwe Sisulu switched sides immediately after the 55th National Conference, after the 54th National Conference of the ANC, when she had a fallout with President Cyril Ramaphosa. And we all know former President Jacob Zuma's views, particularly within the last year or so. Those letters that he's written to ANC President, those voice notes that have been leaked of him being scathing against the National Executive Committee of the ANC, being scathing against the top six of the ANC, going further to say that there's proof and there's facts to allege that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa bought the 54th National Conference. So ANC leaders, once they've taken a position, once they've taken a stance internally in the ANC, it's very difficult to sway them from their various political stances.
Yeah, and then you were talking about the issue of collating numbers, and of course now we would then know, who's eligible, for the top six of the ANC to be voted for the top six of the ANC. I'm sure those names have been thrown around. You even mentioned Zwelini Mkhize there. What are some of the names that we are hearing that perhaps we hadn't heard before? Are there any surprises, or generally just what we have sort of been hearing within the news?
There are no surprises. It's generally what we've been hearing in the media space. It's purely going out and portraying itself to be a contestation and a two-horse race between the man from Willowfontein in Moses Mabhida region in Pietermaritzburg, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, going up against the man from Shawelo in Soweto with his roots from Limpopo Venda, that is Cyril Ramaphosa. So it's a pretty clear two-horse race for the position of president. On the position of deputy president, it's seemingly looking like a landslide victory or a landslide nomination for Paul Shipokoso Paulos Mashatile. And you're also looking at the positions that are hotly contested. It's a position of Secretary General, with Phumulo Moswale's campaign seemingly lagging behind and not picking up as they would want. For instance, the numbers that I've seen, him and Mdumiseni Ntuli, it's a 50% gap between the two. Phumulo Moswale is sitting at about 428 nominations in KwaZulu-Natal. You've got Mdumiseni Ntuli sitting at about 258 to 270 branch nominations, which he's performed very well, exceptionally well in a province that he has been dumped and neglected by his PEC. Then you've got a surprise package coming up of Fikile April Mbalula, who his campaign is seemingly picking up steam from the various provinces across the country, which shows you that the SGO is going to be a contestation between Phumulo Moswale, Fikile Mbalula and Mdumiseni Ntuli. Then you've got Nomvula Mokonyane, who's received more nominations for the position of DSG than any other candidate. The spanner in the works is the position of treasurer. All of the perspectives and factions in the ANC are not clear who they want as Treasurer General. You've also got the nomination of Chupuma Tabata for National Chair. You've got Samson Gwede Mandashe, who's being nominated as well. But the surprise package for National Chair is Dr. David Masondo, who is receiving a huge number of nominations, particularly in Limpopo, Gauteng and parts of the Free State Province, and also in Mpumalanga.
All right, let's leave it there then. We'll certainly be catching up with you at a later stage. Then Samkele Maseko, our senior politics reporter for us in Nasrec, covering that ANC NEC meeting. Of course, talking about that spanner in the works that might be a bit of a surprise when it comes to the top 6 positions. David Masondo, really, they're being put up as one of the leads for the treasurer position within the ANC's top 6.